Dennis Liu. I've been the product manager for vSphere Web Client, the new HTML5 based vSphere client, and all of the vCenter based clients for the last several years now. With me today, I have Tushar Desai, Senior Director of UI Management. I think he owns all the UIs in the vSphere land now. Yeah. So same disclaimer as we always present. You've probably seen it several times today, but anything we talk about here that hasn't already shipped may or may not ever ship, so don't base your purchasing decisions on it. I think that's the most important point, but please read all of these. We have a pretty normal agenda, I think very similar to what we did before. So first thing that you need to do is pull your phone out if you don't already have it out, the 5 of you that don't already have them out, and please go to pollev.com/VMW2017. There's already a poll open there. You can read the question, you can answer the question. It'll help guide us through how much time we want to spend on each one of the topics today. The topics we have are the host client, which, if you may or may not be aware, started as a fling, I think 2 years ago or 2.5 years ago, made its way into the product shortly thereafter. We'll have one slide on that. Then we're going to talk about vSphere 6.5 and the web client in it and the vSphere client in it. And then we're going to talk about the new HTML5 based vSphere client, which also started out as a fling about 1.5 years ago. I think we launched in March 2015, and then it made its way into the actual vSphere 6.5 product in November of that same year. Then our last topic is going to be plugins and certification. We know this is really important for people as they're transitioning either from 6.0 to 6.5, from desktop client to web client, from web client to vSphere client. So we have a lot to talk about over there too. So there's also Poll Everywhere mobile app, but if you've got a nice browser, the browser-based one is fine. So this was the poll that was already there, and I'm pretty sure I had opened it before I started this thing, so hopefully you've been answering that question already. Let's go back. Yes, so please provide an answer. I can leave this open for a little while longer too while I go through the next couple of slides. So the host client. Host client is our term for the single host management UI. You used to use the desktop client to connect to a single host, and it would present you, some subset of options that you used to see in vCenter. The new HTML5 based host client was introduced into the GA product in 6.0U2 and above, as well as 5.5 patch 8. It's also available in the free hypervisor if you're using that in some test dev environments or if you're new to VMware. It provides all the functionality you should need for managing a single host. If it does not, please let us know. We will make sure that we put it in there. Okay, so this slide says that the C#/desktop client is not available in 6.5 vSphere. Is this news to anybody in the room? Is this the first time you're hearing this? Please raise your hand. Don't be shy. Okay, so come talk to me afterwards. I want to find out where you get your VMware news, and we want to go hit that place as well. So it's not shipping. It's not coming back. We're moving forward with the new HTML5 based vSphere client. So let's first talk about the 6.5 web client. Some people did vote for that, but we're going to fly through these slides real fast. So there are several improvements that we made in the 6.5 web client, not just based on performance, but very specific things. One of them is the client integration plugin. For all of you that have headaches with the client integration plugin, which is probably 99.9% of you, you probably can't get it to run, especially with Chrome 57 and Chrome 58 and recent versions of Firefox. So there are 3 functions that are covered by CIP. It's OVF deploy, data store upload download, and content library import export. These functions have now been replicated using modern web technology, so no longer rely on the client integration plugin. You will still in 6.5 need what we call the enhanced authentication plugin for Windows logon. So if you're using that little checkbox that says use my Windows session credentials. The reason for that is because, unsurprisingly, browsers don't have access to your Windows credentials because they really, really shouldn't. Another improvement we made was on the inventory tree. We used to have a problem where you'd be in the inventory tree, you'd click somewhere, and you would magically jump to somewhere else. You had no idea where you ended up. That was kind of our problem, not your problem, that's our problem. So we tried to fix that. Now when you log in, you're going to end up on hosting clusters by default. And when you do a search, the object that you click on will take you to its location in the inventory tree. So you will probably end up staying in the inventory tree all the time without even accidentally jumping to the other thing. Now if you still want to use it, the lists are still there. I'll cover that a little later. Object tabs. Related objects ended up being a tab that didn't make a lot of sense to all of our customers. We tried to cut down the number of tabs to just 4 before, which is summary, monitor, manage, related objects. But that was a little too sparse, let's call it. So we've expanded that back out and called it, VMs, data stores, networks. That should be very familiar to anybody coming from the desktop client and should be very easy to adopt for anybody that's been using the web client. Other thing we did was change configure or manage to configure. Seems like a small thing, but it really helps people be more comfortable with what they're looking for. Sometimes you might think, oh, well, that's not a management thing. That's like a configuration thing, and you don't know where to look for it. Well, we have it different now. The other thing we did was change the second level of tabs, which you can see on the left says settings, storage, networking, and now goes into a vertical set of tabs. Saves you one click, saves you one load. Even though the load's faster now in 6.5, it can always save you one click's always better. Another thing we did was add object actions to the top of the workspace. This was a pretty interesting request. People just saying, I don't want to have to click twice just to do an action. Just let me click once. So we put the most common actions there. We also rearranged the order. I mentioned how we didn't want you to accidentally jump into the inventory lists. When we look at our data, they're used by some subset of customers, but still not dominant. So the trees are still dominant. So we rearranged the order of the objects there. So you see inventory lists drop down to the bottom. We promoted content libraries to be a top level object so that you can sort of manage that. Update managers there. Custom attributes are back in 6.5 for anybody that doesn't know or hasn't seen it. This was sort of maybe, I don't want to say a mistake, but we may have done the wrong thing back in 6.0 saying that we're going to get rid of them. They're back. We're going to keep them around until we find a solution that solves all of your use cases. Then we made an improvement to the VM console. So we need to be very clear about what we're talking about here. There's 2 different types of VM consoles. If you click on the little thumbnail, which is the big black box there, you get what we call the HTML or Web MKS console, which is a new browser tab. It lets you click around. And it's OK for very minimal things like the mouse works, the keyboard works, the screen will update. Only if you have VMware tools installed. If you don't have VMware tools installed, I wouldn't use it. But the other one is called VM Remote Console. We shortened that as Vmrc. Vmrc is a lot more full-featured. It probably gives you an experience that's much more like what you're used to with the console from the desktop client. So for anybody that doesn't already have it installed, I highly recommend you install it. And for those customers that already have it installed, we made it so that you could actually make that your default. So that in certain situations, when you click on something, you can just have it launch whichever one you want instead of the wrong one. So then we also did a lot of performance optimizations. I only mentioned 3 here because if we mentioned all of them, there'd be 30 slides about it. VM configuration, edit settings, which you open probably like 10 times in an hour. VM migration, which you probably do at least a couple times an hour. Provisioning, depending on who you are, same thing. These, according to our anonymous usage statistics, become the largest and highest used workflows. So we made these as fast as we could get them, still subject to the limitations of Adobe Flash and our current infrastructure. One of the other things that we addressed, we call live updates. You may also know it as responsiveness regarding not like resizing things and having it be a responsive web page, but having it show up-to-date information. So all of the red highlighted sections are areas that we sort of enabled for live updates or live refresh. What that means is when somebody powers on a VM, you'll see it reflected in the tree. When somebody performs any action, you'll see it show up in recent tasks. An alarm fires, it'll show up in alarms. We probably made a mistake by not doing this from day one, but we know and have been learning from our mistakes and have been trying to put it back into the product. Next question, when enough people answer. So I'm going to close that one for now, and then we're going to move on to the next one, which is, you can read the options while I switch it to the next question. And then it is, do you have experience with the new vSphere client? Hopefully everyone's heard of it by now, that we've been moving towards HTML5 and we've been trying to replace the Flash-based client. You will see the next slide. So as you're voting on this, I might as well go to the next slide and tell you that who's been to blogs.vmware.com since Friday? Who's seen this one? I guess you've probably seen this one. So that means a lot of people that haven't. We officially announced that the next major release of vSphere will be the last time we release the Flash-based web client. We are putting all of our energy and all of our efforts behind trying to get the HTML5 vSphere client up to date. replace all the functionality, make it performant, and everything. So making this sort of a public announcement helps not just customers move forward, us move forward, it helps partners move forward. So that's why we finally did it. I don't know why it took so long, to tell you the truth. But okay, thank you for voting. And next, Tushar is going to come and talk to us about how we've managed to do what we've managed to do.
Thanks, Dennis. So I think, as Dennis said, I mean, since last 2 years, we have been getting a lot of feedback in terms of the Flex client and its woes and a lot of issues. So we have been trying to, when we started working on the new HTML5 client, we wanted to do something different so that we can offer you much faster functionality at a much faster cadence, as well as being able to focus on usability, performance, scale, reliability, and a whole bunch of things. So what we have done is we have moved from a pure waterfall model to a completely agile model. And basically what we have done is starting sometime mid of the year, we are trying to move into a model where we can release features at a much faster pace in terms of the various 6.5 updates and the patches as well. So what we did is, once we released the 6.5 GA in last November, we had supported roughly about, I would say, 30% of the functionality in which the normal user would be able to do in HTML5 client. But in order to make the transition faster, what we wanted to do was, we also wanted to make sure that every 3 or 4 months, we keep on adding more and more functionality to the HTML5 client so that you could all benefit by having the latest updates. And so what we did in 6.5 OB, as you can see in March, when we got a span of 3 to 4 months, we added a whole bunch of functionality in terms of the data stores and the VM monitoring, the template deployment, and a whole bunch of other things, and we released it out. And another 3-4 months in 6.5 U1, we release a whole bunch of other functionality out. So that way we can keep on increasing functionality, and that way we can keep up to par, and so that you also don't have to wait until next 2 years to get the entire functionality out. So this allows us to get functionality out much faster, as I said, but it also requires us to change the entire model as to how we do engineering on the UI side. And we are probably the very first group in the vSphere organization which is following this agile model, where we are continuously releasing flings on a weekly basis, as you probably know, but we'll be also releasing the production quality code like this on a much faster cadence going forward. So basically, as Dennis said, we typically release the most major versions of vSphere typically every 1.5 to 2 years. And vSphere client is an integral part of vSphere, but we are trying to isolate that from the vSphere and see how we can move faster, and that's what we have been trying to do. As I said, we are trying to move to an entire CI/CD model where we can deliver our bits to even to the new announced VMC, I would say, for the cloud, as well as for all the on-prem customers. This required an entire change in terms of how we engineer our products, how we test our products, how we release our products, and the earlier waterfall model didn't just work in the entire scheme. So we had to revamp everything, change the entire scheme of things, and so it took us time. But now we are benefiting from the fruits of the labor, and now we can actually release the product much faster. And I think in the last year, we released 56 flings already, I think, since last March, probably, except for a week or so. What happens is every week we write some code, test it out, and release it out. And then we actually get a lot of feedback from all of you guys. And based on the feedback, we actually make those changes into our final product, and that's what we put in the various 6.5 update releases. And that's the way how we are doing things. And that's the way we'll actually continue doing things even in the future as well. So I think we started with the Fling, as we are from the host client, as you know. We started with HTML5, and for any other future UI products, we'll try to see if we can use the same model so that we can get all the feedback, do the right thing, and then put that in our products. The other thing is in the Fling is not the Fling. A lot of customers have even deployed Fling in their official and environments as well. Even though normally Fling is not a supported product from VMware, but the Fling has the performance, the stability of the Fling is kept up to a par. So we want to make sure that customers can really use that as well. So it's not that the Fling is something which is not tested properly or it is low in quality. It has the same quality bar as well. One of the cool things that we are trying to do, for the folks who have been trying to play the HTML5 client, is if you see on the top right button, there is a feedback tool. So I would really encourage you to use the feedback tool through which you can really send us all the feedback. What happens is you are bypassing all the middle layers, because that feedback comes directly to PMs and engineering, and we actually look at the feedback on every week. Every week we get lots and lots of feedback in terms of I want to see these features or some enhancements, and there's an ability for the feedback tool to even take the snapshot and send all the other feedback. And there's also a place where you can provide your email address. If you can provide that, that's actually better as well, so that in case if you have questions, we can also go back and ask you questions. But we have, since last a year and a half, we have received tremendous feedback. Thanks to all of you, and we have been reading that feedback and trying to make those changes into a product. Right? So I think that's very, very beneficial for us too. So if you, going forward, as I said, even when we release the next major release of vSphere, even in future, even for that, what we'll be trying to do is we'll be providing the ability for the engineering to provide much faster features on a much faster cadence as well, without having to wait for the other major release of vSpheres. And that's what we want to get into a development methodology, at least for the UI side, not the server side for now. You want to go with this?
Sure. So we have a document online. If you search for the words probably vSphere client supported functionality 6.5, you'll see a giant chart. You saw some little screenshots of it earlier when Tushar was showing what we had in 6.5GA, 6.5.0B, and 6.5U1. This chart is sort of a summary that we put together of what's currently available in 6.5U1. I wouldn't call this the most scientific-based chart. This is based on some feelings ball, as some people like to say. But you'll see that in the fourth column, what we have is a lot of green for a lot of what we would call VM operator or common operations that you do every day. You see some yellow for things that are a mix of things you might do every day and things you might do once a week or once a month. And obviously we have one red bar. We haven't started on the network topology diagram yet, but hopefully you're not using that every day. There's some comments in there regarding what's supported and what's not supported. I think in a previous slide we published that 90% of your time should be coverable by the current 6.5 Update 1 release. If you disagree, please let me know. Send me an email. Use the feedback tool. I'll show you a screenshot of that later. And just let us know what that thing you're missing is, because there have been like dozens of times that we've heard information, reprioritized, and within a month or two gotten that code out. Usually into the Fling first, of course, because the GA release takes a little longer. So let's finally dive into the vSphere client. So this is just a screenshot of it for those that haven't seen it before. I need to be very, very clear. The vSphere client is a rewrite from ground up of the web client in a new technology, new almost everything. And some of the things that used to happen in the old web client are things that we still have to fix in the new one. So client integration plugin, still not there in the HFI client. So you'll see that OVF deploy will work, data store upload download will work, and content library import export will work, again, without the client integration plugin. It would have been the dumbest thing in the world to say, we're going to get rid of Flash, but you got to keep installing CIP. Actually, of those two, I don't know which one has worse performance or worse compatibility. Custom attributes, they were there. So they actually made its way into the Fling, I think, probably 5 or 6 months before we launched vSphere 6.5. So we had a few customers that said, oh, our VM operators need to use custom attributes. We're just going to deploy the Fling so they can have them. They'll continue to be there. Here's a little new UX that we provided on the way that tags creation works. So, if you click that little button, you can see this stuff. Hey, it's not a huge improvement, but it should make your lives easier rather than scrolling through a list of, I don't know, I think it's like 15 to 20 different types of objects. We have a little more massive changes coming later. So live updates is also something that we focused on with the vSphere client. Obviously, it's very important. It's based on the same technology as the new 6.5 web client, but obviously with the way that we have more control of the JavaScript on the front end rather than going through the Adobe Flash plugin, there are situations in which it will actually work better in the HTML5 based client. If you've used the client before, you've seen that we moved recent tasks to the bottom. It's stuck there right now. I did get a question earlier in a different session about whether we would let you move it around again. Hey, maybe sometime in the future, but we've got a lot of things to work on. So right now, all you can do is sort of collapse it right now and show it. Alarms is there too, you know. So we have advanced and overview charts. They're available in the client. If you click on this little button at the top right, what you can actually do is clear out and open a new tab, and you see, hey, you've got like 4 of them open in different windows. If you really, really have to monitor something, it's there. I guess by the badge, it looks like this became available in 6.5b, an example of something that we were able to add thanks to our asynchronous release cycle. I shouldn't really call it asynchronous, but you know, asynchronous to vSphere release, major releases. Another big request we had from especially large customers that had big AD environments hooked up into vCenter is we're able to block login of people that don't have vCenter roles assigned to them. The major case was this, like, hey, your AD at your org might be 100,000 users because that's the size of the company. People need their email, people need their whatever. But you know, only like 100 of them are going to be accessing vCenter. So some people are concerned that when you log in, hey, they can actually log into vCenter. There would be empty inventory because of the way role-based access control works. But it still sort of looks like a big security problem. So security teams would go to the vSphere teams and say, this is a problem, we got to block this. It's available in 6.5b. It actually works for both clients because they share the same login infrastructure. Another thing we introduced, which again was wholly new and very different from the web client, was a dashboard. We replaced the existing home page, which was basically just a bunch of shortcuts to various things, with a dashboard that has not a lot of information on it, but sort of the best summary of stuff that we could find. This is like sort of an experimental feature. It lets you, if you can see on the right-hand side, you can select between the vCenters you're looking at. It's a nice, cool little thing that you can look at if you like it. If you don't like it, it's not going to get in your way. You can just go straight to the hosting clusters tree. So here's a very, very different user experience that we added. When we're doing these studies, the UX team, who's standing there in the back, if you want to wave to any of them, they do, we go out and we say, hey, what annoys you? What's the next most important thing? But what doesn't work quite well? Creation of a new role was, and having done it before myself for just for testing purposes, it was pretty annoying and actually pretty slow. This is the case where I mentioned about scrolling through a list of 20 things before. Roles is what, like 100 different privileges that you have to scroll through. So they went and they did a study and they came up with some mock-ups, analyzed a few options, and we came up with this. So on the left-hand side, you have all the categories. On the right-hand side, you have a nice, easier view of seeing all the different privileges that are there. You'll notice that, especially on this view, you can see that there's a See More Privileges button. Hey, you don't need to see all 50 that are under the VM thing. I'm sure someday we'll add search to this. I can't remember if we already did or not, but that would be the goal. Again, this became available in 6.5b, which, given previous release cycles and previous way we used to do things, you never would have seen this because 2 years later we would have been working on something else. Similar thing for our global permissions. Again, instead of scrolling through a larger list, we have a search-based sort of view. It's very small, very simple. Probably won't even miss any of the old functionality. If you do, let us know. Storage troubleshooting. So this was added in 6.5U1. It's a, I'm not the storage admin, so I can't really describe. But it should help you debug your storage. And this was an effort done by, again, user experience, our storage product owner, who went out and said, hey, look, all my customers are complaining about not being able to do this one thing. And we can solve this problem by providing them this view. And we all said, sure, yeah. If the customers have a problem, solve their problem. Here's another simple-ish one. Being able to download multiple files from a data store at once. Select multiple files. Click the download button. Very easy. Very simple. On top of that, you want to upload a folder? Upload a folder, instead of having to upload individual files. These seem like kind of no-brainer things that we could have put in a long time ago. Admittedly, fine. But actually, that's one of the main benefits we get from another agile development thing. So instead of spending 2 years working on large features and then forgetting about the little things because you say, well, we don't have time for the little things. Now we know what the little things are. We know what the most important ones are for you. We can deliver them. We can fit them into our schedule. So then I just have a few tips that I want to go through. So browser bookmarks, they actually work pretty well with the vSphere client as well as the vSphere web client. You can go to an object, go to some view, copy and paste that URL to somebody else and give it to them. When they get it, they'll be asked to log in, and then they'll see the same object or same view you were looking at. There may be a few situations where it doesn't work. If it doesn't, let us know. We'll go fix it. Browser forward and back. If you've been using the forward and back buttons built into the vSphere web client before, they can be pretty useful. They can also be pretty annoying because they don't go exactly where you expect. Because the way it used to work in 6.0 is it would be object based. So if you went to another object, you could go back to the previous object. Now I think in 6.5 the way it works is forward and back buttons will take you to the previous view you were on. In an HTML5 based land, we have not provided these buttons, and some people have asked us where they are, and we just had to say, well, actually your browser has them now. So go ahead and use the ones in the browser and try those out. Again, there may be certain situations where it doesn't work. Please let us know. We're going to go fix it. But it should work for most views. Shortcut keys. This was a big request by a lot of people. I'm sure by more than half of you probably have been using these shortcut keys in the old desktop client. They're available now. I can't remember which release this was put in. I'm sure it's in 6.5 U1. If you go to action menu, it just shows up and you can see the actual shortcuts. If there's a question about why we made them so complicated, why Control Alt B? Because if you do Control B in Chrome, it probably does something like open your bookmarks. So we had to get a little creative with how that works. But I believe B, E, Z, D, T, R, or whatever, those are the same buttons as you had on the desktop client. You just have to add Alt to them. This one, I feel conflicted recommending that you use the browser zoom in and out, because we always get this complaint about there's not enough information on the screen at once. This is a problem for some people and not a problem for some others. And it's hard to satisfy everybody by having a single setting that says, hey, look, this is the right one. But because of the way HTML, JavaScript, and text and all that works, browser zoom in and out works very well in the HTML5 based client. It also works in the Flash-based client, just not nearly as well because of the way things resize. But I highly encourage you, when you are on a laptop, zoom out a couple times, go to 75%. If you're on a 4K monitor and you can't read your stuff, zoom in a couple times. It'll probably look a little better. So we talked about the Fling a lot. And hopefully everybody knows what that is. We're just going to talk briefly about what it is and how how far we've come with it. The Fling is a separate appliance that you can download from labs.vmware.com. You can point it at a 6.0 or 6.5 vCenter. You register it following some instructions that we have, and then it just gets you the new client against that vCenter. It doesn't do anything else to the vCenter other than the actions you perform. If you delete the appliance, it's like it never existed. It's not like it's making some configuration changes on the back end or anything like that. Again, as Tushar stressed, and we always have to stress whenever we talk about Flings, Flings are technically unsupported products. But as you can see on the bottom, we have tens of thousands of deployments, 50 plus updates, customers that have deployed into environments that went well beyond our testing with the Fling. For our GA releases, we test to larger scale. We test the same scales that we published. But for the Fling, we never really went out of our way to say, oh, we're going to test with this certain scale. But people tried it, and they said it worked. And since it provides better features, they started using it in their, I'm not supposed to say production, I'm supposed to say largest environments. So again, unsupported, but the code is the same. Literally, the code that goes into the Fling goes into the GA product a month later, or 2 months later, or 3 months later. Which means if you really want to stay on the cutting edge, go deploy this appliance. Updating it on a weekly basis is very easy. You log in, you click a button, it says update, you're done, and you just do the update. Now, admittedly, we've had 1 or 2 hiccups regarding the update process, but we will fix those when those happen too. Tushar already mentioned the feedback tool. Here's a screenshot of the feedback tool. If you look at the top right corner of the screenshot, you see a little yellow smiley face. That's how you access the tool. So you just click that button, you get this dialog. It lets you put in some information, some text. The most important field here is your email address, but I will cover that again later. So we have lots of ways that you can give us feedback. And someone mentioned to this me earlier, so I'm going to just indulge me for a second. So 2 years ago when I did this presentation, there was a much larger room and a much higher attendance. Last year, it was a larger room and higher attendance. This year, it is a smaller room and smaller attendance. I'm hoping someone mentioned that this might be the reason. It's because we actually engage with you in public and on a regular basis instead of once a year at VMworld. I'm hoping this is true, and until someone tells me different, please don't tell me any different. I'm just going to assume it to be true. Now, on the other hand, if you want to tell me privately that, no, you're totally wrong, just shatter my dreams. Number 2 is a very important bullet point. So I know with large companies and with security or financial or healthcare, there are issues, and you can't join these sort of anonymous usage statistics type of programs. Ours is called the Customer Experience Improvement Program. If you go into your when you're installing vCenter, it gives you an option to opt in or opt out. When you already have a vCenter open, you can go to administration, I think, and then it's like Customer Experience Improvement Program. Please opt into this. I cannot tell you how invaluable this data has been for us to build the product. We have the opportunity to come and talk to you once a year, maybe once every couple months. But this data is coming to us all the time, and it's at a scale that we cannot achieve even with the 10 different product managers that we have working on the vSphere client. So if you're able to opt in, please. The other one, the screenshot is actually showing the Fling forum. It's not really a forum. It's a comment section on the Fling page. We are in there all day, same as with the feedback tool. We see every comment that comes in. We may not respond to everything, but if it needs a response, we will do our best to try. We always send out surveys. At the end of this, I'm going to ask you to help us with that. Social media, we're out there too. I do monitor Reddit. I do monitor Twitter. You can find me pretty easily if you look at all. Here's just a couple quotes. You can read them if you want. These are the kinds of quotes that sort of make our day. These are not the kind of quotes that actually help us build a better product, but they do make us happier. So that helps us build a better product. I actually have a couple slides later about how we want you to give feedback and what's useful when you're providing feedbacks, just so we can be very specific. So we're going to talk a little more about not just how we got here, about what we're doing going forward, right? That's really why you're here. Disclaimer again, we make no guarantees about when functionality will ship when, if ever. Truth be told, if somebody tomorrow decided, oh, let's work on something else, it's not really up to me. My boss could always tell me to do something else. High level, so we have at least 3 different core reasons or core ways that we are approaching making this product, right? We start with the most common functionality first. This is like the most basic tenet of agile software development. Give you what you need most often first, as soon as possible. Eventually we'll do everything. Look, if there's a question of whether we will finally replace the Flash client with all the functionality, don't even worry about it. We will get to everything that you use. But we have to start with the most common stuff first. Sometimes I get a question of, well, why would you ship 6.5 with something that was partially complete? I don't even want to see it if it's not done. Which is fine. That's an opinion you can have. Just go use the Flash client. Use it all the time. Just pretend like the vSphere client doesn't exist. That doesn't bother me. I would ask you to try it, but if you don't want to, that's fine too. But luckily, we have lots of customers that think of a different way and say, hey, if my VM users can use it, I'll just give it to them. Prevent them from using the Flash client. Reduce your security risk vulnerabilities a little. So the second bullet point is just our main goal is to replace the old client. We did highlight a few places where we made some improvements and some enhancements or added some new features. Those are very targeted, very small. So if we're going to port over something and it's only going to take us 10% extra effort to make it better, we're going to make it better. If it's going to take 50% extra effort to make it better, maybe we'll delay that and maybe we'll wait till later. That means that you may still get some bad experiences with some of the vSphere client user experience. But it's more important that we feel that it's more important we get that in your hands now and help replace the Flash client than later. If you feel differently and you think something sucks that bad and we didn't figure it out, hey, come let us know. The third bullet is just a reiteration, sort of a reiteration of the agile software mentality, is that we provide partially delivered features. The first feature we delivered when we were writing this thing, you could power on a VM. You could not pick which VM you powered on. It did not tell you that it was powered on. And but it was like the very first step of delivering something. Obviously, we're not going to give you that as a feature. Like, customers can't see that, right? Like, that's useless to you. But from a development standpoint, it gives engineering a win. It gets you into the cycle of saying, I'm going to deliver customer value, the smallest amount of customer value that I can, and then PM will decide when it goes out the door and when customers can see it. The other funny one is create VM. You could create a VM, but you couldn't name it. You couldn't pick a host. You couldn't pick a data store. You didn't see that one either, but I always like those. So stated several times up till now, but unstated in this slide up till this moment, is that you have to tell us what you need. You don't have to. Apologize. You don't have to tell us. We can work on our own in a vacuum independent of your feedback, but you've seen the results with the vSphere client that when you tell us what you need and when we go and ask and we listen to you, it's so much better for everybody. We get those happy quotes. You get things that you need. We don't ship some other stupid feature that you don't, sorry, I shouldn't say stupid. Some other feature that you don't use that often as you use something else. Okay, so this is, again, indulge me a little because I put these sort of in the last minute, maybe 2 weeks ago. Because I had the bright idea that sometimes when you want something from somebody, when I want something from you, it's best if I tell you how I want that information, right? I don't just say, give me product feedback. It's a little vague. I should give you a few more instructions. So here I have a couple categories of feedback and a couple explanations as to why they're great, why they're not so great, or whatever. This is an example of nice feedback, right? Somebody just says, hey, congratulations, you're doing a great job. That's very nice feedback. Makes us smile. It's great. I put it up on our web page internally and so all the engineers can see it. But realistically speaking, not the most, what is the word somebody used the other day? Not the most productive or useful for product development feedback. Please send these. Don't stop sending these ones. But also send examples of the next type, right? This is a sort of a semi-useful feedback. Somebody says, all the tasks show as invalid date in the HTML5 client. Please accommodate non-US date format. That's very useful information. That helps me understand that exactly where your problem is. The date is not displaying correctly. But there's some information that's lacking. I don't know what sort of international format you're looking at. I don't know what locale you're using. So this person didn't provide their email address. I couldn't get back to them and respond. So please leave your email address. It doesn't even matter if it's you think your report is very comprehensive and you think that you've provided all the information. Unless you really, really don't want us contacting you, leaving your email address can only be a benefit. This is also useful feedback. So being able to manage licenses and updates would be good. You don't need to send me this one. I've heard it a dozen times. Go ahead if you want to, but we're working on both of these already. So VUM is being worked on and license is being worked on. I'm not promising when that ships, as given the previous disclaimers. But this could be a little better as well, right? So if this person left their email address, the first question I would ask them is, what part of licensing do you need? Do you need to assign a license to a host? Do you need to add licenses into your vCenter? Or what? Or if you're talking about updates, do you need to do X, Y, Z thing in VUM? VUM's pretty complicated and sort of comprehensive, so maybe the question wouldn't be as useful. So here's just a few, skipped it. Here's just a few guidelines. So do the first 4 things. Email address, screenshots, specificity. And the fourth one wasn't covered before, it's very important. Stay on the latest versions. And latest versions here is not just 6.5U1, which, fine, that went out like a month ago, but to tell you the truth, that code is now 3 months old. We released a fling last week. We're probably not going to do it this week because of VMworld, but last week we did, I think 3.20. Don't ask about our naming conventions. Our numbering conventions is a little weird, but 3.20 is code from, again, a week and a half ago, which is 3 months additional development on top of what went into 6.5U1. So if you ask about, hey, is this feature in 6.5U1, we'll probably say no, but it might be in the fling. So don't forget any of the above. I couldn't figure out what else to put in the don'ts. But yeah. Here's a few more links. This is mostly for the recording. I don't expect you to write these down or type these in. But if you're viewing the recording later, there's a bunch of information. In fact, if you could probably just search for these keywords, you could probably find it online. I mentioned earlier the supported functionality list for vSphere 6.5 is probably one of the more important pieces that you'll see there. So we're going to talk about the plugin certification program really fast. We know during this transition, plugins is sort of a very, very big blocker for a lot of people. So We know the internal ones. We know about SRM. We know about VUM. We know about NSX. We know about vSAN. But for the certification program, we're talking about third parties. So if you were using Veeam or Commvault or Dell OpenManage or something like that, we want to get them in this program. In VMware Solutions Exchange, which is a website we have a subsection that's specifically tied for web client plugins. When partners get certified, they get on our compatibility guide. So you can actually search for which plugins have been certified. This means we're saying that these plugins have been tested to at least a standard that we've set, as opposed to, hey, random thing from nowhere. Who knows? So let's just talk a little bit about the future. 6GA, 0B, U1, future. Some release. I'm sure we'll still have 6.5 releases. We'll keep updating the bits in there. Probably every 3 to 4 months, depending on whatever the vCenter schedule is. Currently, we're still delivering them as part of vCenter patches. It'll probably continue that way for a while. We'll keep shipping the Fling. The whole point of both of these things is to quickly address your feedback. So without your feedback, we don't know what to make. We can keep doing it, but we might be wrong. So please tell us. As Tushar mentioned, the Fling, it's been so successful for us for the past year and a half that I don't see any reason we would ever stop. If we go to the next major vSphere release, we will still continue releasing Flings. To reiterate on the first thing that we talked about with the new blog post, new development has stopped on the Flash client. If you're worried about us wasting time on something that we've already announced deprecated, that's not going to happen. We're only focusing on this. So if you report a bug or you want our usability enhancement, we'll say, sure, we probably won't fix that in the web client. We will probably fix it on the vSphere client. And then you'll probably say, OK, sounds great. So I have a few more polls. Hopefully we have enough time for these. This one's a pretty simple question. It's just what version of vSphere client are you using? So I understand that for several of you out there, your E and F are options. So you can go ahead and, OK, yes, I opened it. You can go ahead and answer. We just want the truth. It's, sometimes this data is hard for us to collect, so we like to use this opportunity to get the information from you. Yes, that's an interesting diagram. So sometimes they tell us that we shouldn't share all of this information because we don't know who's going to be in the audience. But this one seems pretty safe. But we do have a lot of people on 6.5 already, which is nice. And then the other major group is that don't have 6.5, not using the Fling, which is also perfectly OK. If you have any opportunity in your test environments to try out the Fling, it's very simple to deploy. Just use it for like an hour. See if you like it. Maybe you like it so much that you end up deploying it into other test environments or other non-test environments. I can say that word, right? And then didn't use the bad word. So I'm going to close this one, and I'm going to go to the next one, which is this one's a little more involved. So this is a set of 4 questions, and you're supposed to rate the 4 questions. So on scale, I believe. I don't actually have it open in front of me, but if you're able to give this one an answer, I'm going to give you a little more time for this one because it's more questions. What we're trying to get at here is, independent of replacing the Flash client, we still have problems, right? So people either coming, you've been very comfortable using the desktop client for 10 years, 10 plus years. You literally know where everything is. You don't even have to look for anything. With the new vSphere client, we are trying to make it so it's easier for you to adopt. It's not just like the web client where everything was changed, and it's not just like the desktop client where everything is the same. We had to give a good middle ground for everybody to come over. Like, we need the new workflows, we need the new user experience, which is a little better, but we need to make it more familiar. So we're trying to understand with this question and whatever the sub-questions are, which things you're having the most trouble finding, and maybe we can then go and try to tackle that. The UX team will have that job next. So once we get the answer for this. I wish I had changed the orders of these because the next question is a shorter question and I can't give you as much time on it. So let's just hope people got a chance to answer that previous one and jump to this one, which is just very simple. How often do you find yourself switching from the HTML5 based vSphere client back to the Flash client? This is sort of our main metric, to tell you the truth, of how well we're doing. Because suffice to say, I don't think anybody's going back to the Flash-based client because they like it. And the more people we get in A and B, the better everybody is off, right? If you answer, C or D, you have an opportunity on the next question to actually fill out what the problem is. So we're opening that one right now because we got a bunch of responses. So here, tell us what's missing. Tell us what's making you go back to that client. You can type in anything you want. You're probably going to end up typing VUM. You're probably going to end up typing SRM, NSX, vSAN. These are all very common. If they're third-party plugins that you're reliant on the Flash client, write those in. If there is some piece of VM hardware like a floppy disk that you use, we don't support that right now. Let us know. We never really thought it was important. And then just the other day, someone said, I use floppy disks, so I need to be able to add them as hardware on my VM. Anything like that, right? So we've delivered the most important portions of common features and left out some of the less important ones. But we need you to tell us if those less important ones, in our opinion, maybe we got it wrong. That's fine. We get things wrong. We'll go fix it. OK, so that's the last important poll. So I'm going to leave that one open. And I forgot to close my parentheses in the question. Oh, man, I need to go fix that.
It's an open question.
Yes. Oh, yeah, there you go. It's an open question. So I'm going to leave that open for now, but I'm going to go through the rest of my slides. So if you have not already been there, there's this thing called VMware Design Studio. It's on, I think, it's on the 3rd floor at the end of the hallway to the left. They have a big room where they are doing all sorts of user experience investigations and experiments. There's this really fun thing. I don't know if they're still running it, but I ran through it during the test last week. You can design your own VM summary page using these magnets and various components. It's a very useful experience for us to help learn like what you need to do, what you need to do, and how we can redesign stuff in the future. There's a sign up link at the bottom, bit.ly VMworld-UX. I think it's a scheduling tool. It just lets you pick one of their open slots. If you don't find any open slots you can go to, but you have an hour of free time, go up there, see if they have any openings. They might be able to accommodate you. You might even just enjoy watching them do stuff. I know I do, even though it's my job, I guess. So, OK, I think those are the end of my slides, but I'm going to open this last poll, and I'm going to go back to it just because I need to explain. So I mentioned before we do surveys all the time, at least like once a month. If you are willing to fill out any of our surveys, please just submit your email address here, and we'll add you to our list. We try not to spam you, but we also try to get as much feedback as we can. So if you are not willing to fill out a survey, just don't put in your email address. That's OK. Also, I'm very curious about how all your answers from the previous polls were. So if you are in a very unique case of, say, some version, but you still go back to the Flash client multiple times a day because of some very unique reason, and you want to talk to me about that, like come up after this session, and we can talk about that. Or you can put your email address in here, and that would work too. Or just post on the Fling forum, or post on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Dennis Go BLU. My name is Dennis Liu, so it's like Go BLU. That's it. That's my session. Please fill out your VMworld official survey. I'm supposed to encourage you to do that. If you have any questions, come up to the mic. If you have public questions, if you don't have public questions and you want to come up to the stage, I've got Tushar will help answer questions. We have some folks from the engineering team up here too. We'll get you to the right person.